But then the other half of me was like, you know what? If she needed oxygen, even if she just needed suction to get it cleared, I am so glad that they're keeping us here, because if that happened at home, I would go into such a panic. I don't even know what I would do. But I walked in and she was sleeping, and one of the nurses came in and said, okay, so Quinn had a bit of a rough night. And automatically, like, I felt like my heart was in my throat. I said, what do you mean she had a rough night? So I guess it was around 2 in the morning, and it was before a feeding. Her alarm started going off because she was choking on, I'm assuming, like, with the reflux, she was trying to throw up or spit up, and she could not clear it on her own. And they had to, I think they had to give her, they had to suction her to try and help her. Like, she just was not strong enough, you guys. She really was struggling. And for it to be before a feeding was really, I think, something that kind of alarmed them. Like, it's one thing if they've just eaten and they're trying to spit up after, but they were going in to get her ready to take a bottle, and this is what happened. So yeah, so they had to suction her, and they ended up having to give her oxygen. So as soon as that happens, that adds another full week onto your stay there. And it's like, I don't know, half of me was like, are you kidding me? I just want to go home with her. Like, I just want to be at home in the comfort of my own home, have our family come and relax, because I was still in so much pain with the gallbladder spasms. And then they said, no, like, you have to stay for another week now. But then the other half of me was like, you know what? If she needed oxygen, even if she just needed suction to get it cleared, I am so glad that they're keeping us here, because if that happened at home, I would go into such a panic. I don't even know what I would do. And being that we're so far away from a hospital, like, what would happen? I just don't even know. So then at that point, Bryden and I decided we really needed to go and take a first aid CPR course, like, for infants, just so we knew we were prepared if something bad happened when we came home. So we did that right at the hospital one night after we left her. So probably, I want to say it was around 8 o'clock. So we were there still with her for the whole day. And then I think we might have even ended up going back after to give her a bath. Anyways, so finally we got home, and that was 3 weeks later, and she was still struggling to eat, you guys, and I was still trying to pump, and I wasn't sleeping. I had to hold her for every moment of the day because she had such bad reflux, and she would just throw up and choke, and with her being on her back, like, she couldn't get it out on her own. And it was so scary. And Bryden was with me in the beginning, even once we got home. Like, he made sure that I wasn't by myself, thank goodness, because it would have been so scary. And slowly my mood just started to, it went from, like, the baby blues, from being so overwhelmed with everything that was going on with her genetics and not having answers, and the spinal fusions, and having to see the orthopedic surgeon. I don't even know. This birth story is all over the place, and I'm so sorry for that. I'm just trying to recall everything. It's a lot to remember. I'm probably even missing information. But yeah, it took forever to get her to take a bottle. It was so hard. And I remember trying to breastfeed her, and I hired a lactation consultant to come to the house to help me, because she wasn't able to latch very well. And she did actually end up having, she had a small tongue tie, but we had that clipped before we left the hospital. And then, yeah, the lactation consultant came to the house and tried to give me tips and see how she was doing. And I didn't have anything to compare it to, so I really didn't know, like, Was she latching? Would I know if she was latched? Was she getting any milk? And I had a nipple shield that I could use to help her, just to give her like more to latch onto, because her mouth was so small. Oh my gosh, she's still tiny. She's like under the 3rd percentile for height and weight, like, which is totally normal. She's trended that way the whole time. She's just a tiny little thing. But yeah, so that was such a struggle, and I managed to exclusively pump and feed her with the nipple shield on for, I want to say it was like 4 months. And then randomly one day, we got home from my in-laws, and I said, it was like late in the evening, and I said, do you mind just, Bryden, getting a bottle together for her? I'm going to try and get her to latch. And I was just standing in the kitchen with him, and I couldn't believe it, you guys. It's like she just figured it out at 4 months or so, around there. She latched. And I was so happy. I just couldn't, and there's nothing against bottle feeding at all. I just could not believe it. I was like, I'm so glad I stuck with this. And from that point on, she was able to breastfeed. But my postpartum depression got so bad probably from when we were in the hospital. It started, and I ended up, I was so horrible to Bryden, you guys. I was like the nastiest person. The things that would come flying out of my mouth, oh my gosh, I'll never forgive myself for it. But I know I was going through such a tough time. I ended up having to go and see a social worker to work through some of the feelings I had. And I just remember feeling so upset over the fact that all of these genetic issues came up, and I was really not privy to the information before getting pregnant. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that side of the family, with my husband's family. Like, it's just scoliosis and like the palate issue, like with the submucous cleft palate, which my sister-in-law has. And like 3 of the 4 siblings have some degree of scoliosis. One's a lot worse than the other. She had to have surgery when she was a teenager, I believe. And I'm not going to say their names because I don't know if they really want to be included in this video, obviously. But yeah, so I just remember being like, I felt so blindsided and lost. And now not knowing what was going on with Quinn. Did she have something specific that was different? Or was it just scoliosis? Like, I just didn't know how it was going to impact her. And then I slowly started to notice with her that she wasn't able to turn her head very far to the right when she would sleep. So we ended up co-sleeping with her just because her choking was such a big issue when she was sleeping at night, being on her back, and we couldn't put her on her stomach, which I'll get to later on. This video is going to take forever, I'm sorry. But this is all kind of like shedding light on why I think I developed such bad postpartum depression. And none of it had to do with Quinn specifically. Like, I didn't feel like, I had no feelings ever of wanting to harm her. That was not something I had an issue with. It was just more anger towards Bryden and resentment and, oh my gosh, so many negative feelings. And just, I honestly wanted to disappear. I just really wanted to disappear. And so we ended up having to put me on an antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication that was going to work a little bit better for me. At least we wanted to try it out. So that was something that I started probably in June of 2017. So she would have been like 3 to 4 months, somewhere around there. Anyways, where was I? So yeah, so she couldn't turn her head to the right very well. When she was laying on her back, she basically always would look like up to the left, so her head would tilt back to the right. And then once she was able to start like sitting up, we noticed that her head was always kind of like tilted to the right, and she started to develop a flat spot on the like back left of her head. And I remember mentioning it to her pediatrician, and guys, when they say mom knows best, it's true. Like, don't ever back down. If you think that you know better, you just keep pushing, because I knew that something was wrong with her neck. And I didn't know if it had something to do with her spine at that point. I didn't really know. So eventually the doctor was like, her pediatrician was like, well, just try switching her head in her bed. So put her head at the other end, because typically babies like to look out into the room. So if her crib or her bassinet or whatever is up against a wall, put her head at the other end, and then she should look into the room. And I was like, okay, I'll try it, but I know that it's not going to work. And of course it didn't work. She just physically could not turn her head to the right. Not very far anyways. It was such a struggle. So I ended up taking her to, we have the Thames Valley Children's Center attached to the hospital where Quinn was delivered, and I took her to the torticollis clinic, and they kind of assessed her there, and they said she definitely has torticollis. So I worked with physiotherapy there, and they gave me different stretches and exercises that I had to do with her at home every day as much as I could within her level of comfort. But I just remember thinking, I felt so isolated, and I felt like I didn't want to put her in her car seat. I didn't want to put her down, because when I had to put her down, when she wasn't able to sit until around 8 months, she was on her back, because when she was on her stomach, I would try and do tummy time, don't get me wrong. I tried everything. She could not lift her head. And I just was like, is this what every baby is like with tummy time? Like, they physically cannot lift their head up off the ground. Like, forget using their hands or their forearms. She could not even like lift her head enough to turn it. And she would just scream. And I was like, man, this is so unusual. Like, I can't believe that this is normal. And so I kept doing the stretches with her, and I didn't even want to go out for a walk. I did not want her to be on the back of her head, because that flat spot was getting so bad that I just felt like I needed to hold her. And she wanted to be held all the time, which didn't bother me. But in the meantime, I was trying to exclusively pump to give her breast milk. I really wanted to be able to breastfeed her at some point. So guys, sorry, I'm like jumping all over the place. This is like leading up to the 4-month mark before I was able to breastfeed her without a nipple shield. I just would have to hold her on one side while I pumped on the other side, and then switch and hold her on this side and pump on this side, because I couldn't put her down. She would just scream, and like to the point where she was like not breathing. She would just be screaming so much. And she still had issues with the reflux and choking, and oh my gosh, you guys, it was so overwhelming. Ugh, I don't wish it upon anyone. I really don't. And it probably sounds like nothing to some of you, because I know, like, there's, like I said before, there's so many more worse off situations that new moms go through. But for me, it was bad. It was really bad. And I knew going into it, I had to be mentally prepared, because I already struggled with anxiety and panic, but nothing was going to mentally prepare me for what we went through. And like everything happening, like it just kept coming. Like it felt like we couldn't catch a break. So eventually the physiotherapist that we saw through the torticollis clinic gave me a pamphlet to go see someone that does the cranial molding for helmets. So I took Quinn there, and they did some measurements on her head. I think they measured the circumference, and then they measured like across from ear to ear, and then front to back down the middle, and then diagonally on each side, just to assess like how many millimeters out she is. So she had her measurement, and I don't know exactly, I think this is like the diagonal measurement that they were checking, was out by 19 millimeters. And I believe that they will start treating it when it's out by 4 is considered normal, but I think they say 10. I could be wrong. It's been a while. So the lady there said she was an ideal candidate for a helmet. And so I didn't even care at that point how much it was going to cost. It's quite expensive. And I came home to Bryden and I said, I really think that we need to do this for her, because it's just going to keep getting worse. It's not even about fixing necessarily what had already been molded into this plagiocephaly. I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to get any worse, because she was starting to have like dysmorphic features. So like her ears were shifting. So her left ear was sticking out quite a bit, I believe. And her forehead, I believe, was sticking out on the right side more so than on the left. It starts to really like change the shape of your face and your bone structure too. So, Bryden said, yeah, whatever we have to do, we'll do it. So we went ahead with the helmet, which I think it costs around $3,000. And if you have benefits, I'm sure you would have coverage, but at that point we didn't have benefits. It did not matter. It was something that I really wanted to do for her. So we had the helmet on her from October of 2017 until I think it was May of 2018. And at that point, like, I was pregnant with Shay. I found out I was pregnant with Shay in November, so Quinn was around 8 months old. Yeah, so she wore the helmet for all that time, and we went for regular checkups. I think it was like, in the beginning, it was every 2 weeks we had to drive to London, and they would check her measurements and let me know how things were coming along, and then they would shave down the foam on the inside of the helmet to make room for how her head's shape was changing. And God, the helmet was so cute, you guys. Oh my gosh, I'll try and insert a picture of it if I can figure out how to do that, since I'm so new to this. It was adorable. It made her head look so big, but she did not care. It didn't bother her in the least. She slept with it on. It was on 23 hours a day. I would take it off of her at bath time to clean her hair, and it got really stinky with sweating, especially in this, like, when it was still warm out. And then, like, coming into May at the end, it was so smelly. But it changed her head shape so much. In the end, it was like, I think she went from 19 millimeters down to 3 millimeters, I want to say, which is like more than what they consider perfect. So it was so worth it. I would do it a million times over. And she didn't, like I said, she didn't even care. And it was so easy to keep it on her, get it off of her, especially when she was able to sit up on her own. But yeah, that was just another one of those things we had to deal with. And it just felt like the whole first year there was not one single moment that, like, I was truly at ease and able to just sit and play with her and enjoy her. I felt like if I wasn't doing physiotherapy with her, I was hindering her development. And it ate away at me every single day. And I would talk to my girlfriends, and they would reassure me, but no amount of reassurance was making me feel better. It's just, my mind was just not in a good place. Once I was pregnant with Shay, I was like, things were starting to get better, but it was like the first 6 months I felt like I was not a good mom. I felt like I was just not doing enough for her. I constantly questioned everything. Like, when she started eating solids, like, she seemed delayed in that. Was I not helping her enough with, like, getting her to feed herself? Like, she just had no desire to pick up food on her own. And I was able to see, like, my sister's little guy, who was 6 weeks younger than Quinn, like, he was eating on his own. He would feed himself. He wanted to put everything in his mouth, and Quinn still wasn't able to do tummy time, so we were still seeing physio at that point. We're still seeing physio today. What am I saying? Like, we still have home visits come. So we switched from torticollis clinic to like just a physiotherapist that would come from Thames Valley Children's Center to our house. So they're still working with her today, and she's great. She gives me so many pointers, and she reassures me, which is super helpful, that I'm doing everything I can to help Quinn. Quinn didn't start walking until she was, I want to say, close to 19 months. She started, and then I don't know, she kind of had a tumble, because when she falls with her low tone and muscle weakness, she never was able to brace herself. So like when any other kid starts walking and they fall, they kind of know to put their hands out, like as an instinct. Quinn never did that. She would just literally fall flat on her face. And I think she scared herself enough that she stopped wanting to walk without our assistance. So of course we would help her. Like, we wanted her to be able to get around, because she was just so frustrated all the time. Like, she had such a desire to move, but she couldn't do it. And she just started learning her transitional movements. Like, she wasn't able to go from like laying to sitting to kneeling to standing or back down. When she was in a position, she was stuck in that position. So if she was sitting on the floor, even once Shay came, like, until recently, like, I want to say she was like around 2 years old, or close to 2 years old, just earlier, maybe in February, that she figured out how to transition through her movements. And it is such a struggle for her even to this day. Like, it's not smooth. It takes her forever to go from standing to sitting to laying, and she still asks me for help. Like, she still wants me to help her get down and get up if I'm available, if I'm not with Shay. So it's just so obvious that she has muscle weakness, and we are now seeing a neurologist because we wanted to rule out something muscular, like aside from the scoliosis, because the orthopedic surgeon that Quinn sees is pretty convinced that her spine is not hindering her development. Like, there's nothing. So she has posterior fusions in her cervical spine. She has something called spina bifida occulta, which I guess 20% of people have that, and they don't know. Like, it's not something that you would have any symptoms of. It doesn't cause any problems in 20% of people. I don't know if I'm getting these statistics right, you guys, sorry. So the way we found all of this out was, I said to the orthopedic surgeon, I would really like to have an MRI done, because the x-rays that they were doing every 6 months were not really totally shedding light on what was going on in her spine. Like, I felt like we needed to get a better look. So we managed to get Quinn into a hospital in Hamilton, Ontario, because the wait list in London was like, it was ridiculous for a sedated MRI. I want to say it was like 1.5 years. And with my mental health, I was like, you guys, I am not waiting that long. I was determined to get her in faster than that. So I called the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto to see what their wait list was, and I checked in Hamilton, and Hamilton was like, I don't know, so much better. 2 months, I want to say, 2 or 3 months. So I took her to her pediatrician, and I said, can you please fax off her requisition to Toronto Sick Kids and to Hamilton McMaster, which is the children's hospital, for her sedated MRI, because I'm not willing to wait. I was so frustrated at this point that I was like, I was just pushing everyone. I was like, it's gonna be my way or the highway now. I'm here to advocate for my child. I am not gonna be walked all over, because I knew that was the only thing that was going to give me peace of mind. So sure enough, we got a call or a letter in the mail, I can't remember, from McMaster to set up an appointment to go see the anesthesiologist to get Quinn assessed. And by the end of January of 2018, we had an appointment for her to go for her sedated MRI. So we stayed overnight in a hotel, which was horrible because, so she was breastfeeding. I couldn't feed her past, I want to say, midnight. And she was still waking up like every 2 hours at night. So once she woke up at midnight, I fed her in the hotel. I couldn't feed her again until after the MRI. And it was so delayed. I don't know what was going on, if they had like emergencies going on that they couldn't get her in for her appointment time. So that was torture, but like small problem really compared to what we were dealing with. It was just like get through the day. And I was so nervous for her to be sedated. And I went in with her and everything went well, and it was a quick process. But anyways, we were able to see what exactly was going on. So she's missing a vertebrae in her lower back. She has the spina bifida occulta. She has the posterior fusions in a couple of her cervical vertebrae in her neck. And then what else? Oh, she has, I think they call them hemivertebrae, which is causing the scoliosis and possibly some fusions of her ribs. But yeah, the orthopedic surgeon doesn't seem to think it's impacting her ability to do, like, lift her head during tummy time at that point. So I said, okay, like, we need to figure out what's going on then still. Like, there's got to be an explanation for it. And I'm not just going to sit back and be like, okay, this is what it is. Like, I need answers. So we ended up getting referred to a neurologist. We saw the neurologist and talked with them, and they sent her for blood tests, I believe, just to rule out, like muscular dystrophy, or I think maybe cerebral palsy. There was a whole panel of stuff that they tested her for. And her levels came back slightly elevated when we went back for a follow-up appointment, but nothing that they were overly concerned about. So here we are today. We're waiting for our next appointment with neurology, which I believe is in June. And then we have another orthopedic appointment coming up in April, at the end of April, I believe. So I'll keep you guys posted on what's going on. My mental health, on the other hand, is much better today. Shay is such an easy baby, and Bryden has become the most helpful guy, and Quinn is like such a ray of sunshine. She's going through the terrible twos right now, like I've probably mentioned, but we take it a day at a time. I'm trying to not let her get away with murder, but hey, if you guys have any tips and tricks with how to deal with tantrums in a toddler, I would love to hear them, because the struggle is real sometimes. And she's in daycare, you guys, 4 days a week to help her with her development. And so anyways, you guys, this vlog is going to be incredibly long, and I hope it's not too boring, and I hope some of you can relate or get some sort of peace from knowing that you're not alone with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and post-traumatic stress. So okay, I'm gonna end it here, you guys. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you stick around. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, bye guys.